Hey, everybody, and welcome back to Coffin Talk Interviews with the Living, a weekly podcast that explores how our views on death affect the way we live our life. And this week, I have a friend from my MFA program, Kristina Voegele. She's awesome. She's a professional writer. We all went to school to become professional writers. I think she's one of like four of us who actually did that. And I am more than proud of her because she has a really awesome novel that I read, like, I think literally the day it came out. It's called Annie in Retrospect. There will be a link for how to buy it. We're also going to talk a little bit about it at the end of the interview, but most of the interview is just another standard, awesome Coffin Talk interview in which a normal human talks about so many interesting philosophical discussion points that my mind was blown, and I hope yours is too. And I say at one point in the interview, but I think it's worth repeating here. This show is really designed to bring people together. The whole point of it is just for all of us to see that, like, hey, we're all on a weird experience called being alive and being aware of that. And I think Kristina articulates it so well in so many different answers about so many different things, and it was just so fun to catch up with her and to hear how she's doing. And the end of the interview is definitely my favorite as far as humor goes, because we talk about what it's like to be in your 40s and think back to your 20s. And so if you are in your 40s or 50s or 60s, or you're in your 30s especially, it's going to make you laugh a lot. And if you're in your 20s, it might even help you live so that when you're 40, you don't have regrets and you feel even better about your 20s. So I'm not going to spoil the interview, but that part was really fun for me. Christina's just such a warm, interesting, intellectually driven, but like not annoying and not pretentious person. And I do not meet a lot of people like her. And especially at Mills College where we went, she was a rare breed of just like open integrity, honesty, kind to everyone, and nothing's changed. I haven't talked to her since I graduated in 2011 and around 2012, and it was so cool. Now it's 2026, so 14 years later, to reconnect with her. She's a great human. Hopefully all of you are great humans in your own eyes, because you are, whether you like it or not. And she even gets into that. That's how cool Kristina is. So thank you for listening. Thank you for tuning into the podcast. And everything's going well in my life. As I just said, it is now 2026. When you hear this, it will have been 2026 for 25 days or so, but we record these a little early, so we have time to edit and all that. So please forgive me if you were hoping this had been recorded yesterday. It was not. It was recorded on January 7th, 2026, and our guest was Kristina Voegele, and my name is Mike Oppenheim, and it was so fun to talk to her. Cue the regular show, Sam. Hi, everybody, and welcome to Coffin Talk Interviews with the Living, a weekly podcast that explores how our views on death affect the way we live our life. And this week is actually an old colleague of mine from our MFA program at Mills College. Her name is Kristina Voegele. We had not talked in almost 10 years, and then I found out she was releasing a book. I read it in like, I think 3 days, and I loved it. So I'm going to talk about her and her life and her relationship to spirituality and death and dying and all that, but we're also going to spend a little time talking about her new book, which I really hope you buy, and there will be a link for it. She holds an MFA just like I do from Mills College, and she has spent over a decade writing for global brands before penning her debut novel, the one we're going to talk about, Annie in Retrospect. And whether through her fiction or essays on personal growth and creativity, her work empowers women to reconnect with the parts of themselves they set aside. Although a caveat, I think it also empowers men, just saying that. And she lives on the coast in the San Francisco Bay Area with her husband, daughter, and twin boys. Twin boys, wow. So again, there will be links to find her and her wonderful book in the notes section. But for now, let's welcome Kristina to the show. Hi.
Hi. Thank you so much for having me.
Yeah, I'm excited. And so our requisite question of all guests is, how old are you? Where did you grow up? And what generation, if any, do you consider yourself a member of?
Yeah, so I am 42, just turned 42 this past December. And I grew up in Florida, actually, Florida native, and moved to the Bay Area for grad school in 2010. And I identify as an Xennial, so that kind of micro generation between Gen X and millennials. I don't know, like I feel like people are using the term elder millennial more now for that same kind of subset, but like I really don't feel like I fit squarely into millennial or Gen X. Like I feel like just much more of kind of a blend of the two. So I mean, I definitely can relate to like all the silly millennial content that's out there. I'm like, oh, okay, yeah, but I think we're kind of that like micro generation of like like we really actually had to call people's houses and leave messages with their parents and like share a phone with the whole household or siblings, and we remember what it was like before the internet, you know, like I think we're kind of the last ones, right?
Yeah.
Like so I don't know, I feel like yeah, not quite a millennial.
No, I think that's a great
Yeah.
answer. And I think like for some reason when you said that, like star 69 and call waiting came to mind. Like
Yes.
that's
They're
like
like, just start star
yeah.
69 so they don't know who you call. You
Yeah.
called. Yeah.
I think
You're like
that's
crank calling
yeah.
people. Yeah. Yeah.
That's our micro generation, and I do agree. I'm
Yeah.
44, and also I think they call us elder millennials because they just want to use the word elder. I think they're just trying to like throw
Yeah.
throw us off the cliff a little earlier.
Yeah. No, for sure. Yeah.
Yeah, you just wrote a great. You're on you are on Substack, which I am as well, and you wrote a great essay on turning 42 that I really loved because I think it's aging is so different for men and women in this culture. I think, but it's still a big deal to all of us, and I really appreciated it. And so I think in your answer was a lot of that, which is just like acceptance and understanding it. But I will say. I totally agree with you. I don't fit into either one, and I really do feel like we have a cohort that like starts right after Atari and then goes until Super Nintendo, something like that. So, um, and
Totally.
then just because I have to ask, because my wife's from Miami, which part of Florida are you from?
I grew up in Daytona Beach,
Oh,
so like 4 hours north of Miami, also on the Atlantic coast. So, if like there's
yeah,
Florida, wait, I
yeah.
don't know
No,
which
you're
one.
good.
Anyway,
Yeah.
whatever. So like Miami is like down here,
Uh huh.
right? Panhandle, obviously. Daytona is like here.
Okay. Is
So
it?
it's like Jacksonville is like here, right?
Mm-hmm.
Sorry.
Yeah.
Orlando is like here. Tampa is like here.
Okay. Cool.
So yeah, it's like
Awesome. So what was it like? Because
yeah.
you relocated to California, like not talking about contemporary politics, but actually in 2010, like was that a huge move back then, or like as far as culture?
Oh gosh, it was a huge, huge move for me culturally. Yeah, I would say North Central Florida is a pretty it's more of the South, right? Florida is a weird state in that it's kind of almost like the more south you are, the more northerners
Yeah,
like
yeah.
migrate down there, right? And then northern Florida is more like Georgia culturally, right? So it's like it's more southern, right? In northern Florida, they call it the sweet tea line, right? So like
That's cool.
I-4 kind of goes through the state, and if you're south of I-4, you're south of the sweet tea line. But if you're north, if you go to a restaurant, you should be able to get sweet tea.
That's
So
cool. That's a
yeah,
great.
it's
I've never
kind
heard that.
of,
Yeah.
that's kind of a silly thing about Florida, but yeah, I would say moving from uh, northern Florida to Oakland or to San Francisco, and then going to grad school in Oakland at one of the most progressive schools in the country was a pretty big shift for someone who grew up in a Christian conservative household. So
Okay.
yeah, like it was personal growth on steroids. Like it was like a whole different worldview kind of like I'm suddenly in it, right?
Yeah.
I didn't understand why people didn't care that it like college football was happening on Saturdays, and you know, like I was
Yeah.
just like what is happening? Like where am I? Um yeah. So
Yeah. No, in addition to being one of the only men in the camp, so I've said this
oh
enough
yeah.
times, but MFA program at Mills admits men, but the undergrad student is all women. And I think it's a little weird that they don't really tell young women going to college there, oh, there's going to be men on campus. They're going to be in the grad program. So I just kind of like I like shaved a lot and just tried to like walk around being as like unmale as possible. And the number one thing I had to do was check my sports card at the door. Like I never met a guy there who watched sports, and I was like and then our mutual friend Colton was the only person I ever met who liked sports, so we became roommates. And
Colton, he was the
yeah,
best.
yeah. So
Oh man. Um yeah, I think it it was it was interesting. Like I think I mean, I learned a lot, right? And
mhm.
I think it was I mean, it was really one of the first times I ever really got totally out of my comfort zone, was my move to San Francisco and going to grad school at Mills. Um, and I think that it was something I had to do in order to like become the type of person I think that could write a book, right? Because I
Hmm.
think I hadn't um, had my own adventure yet, right? Like
Yeah, yeah.
I think it was kind of my like coming into myself, discovering who I was outside of everything that I knew, right? And um, I felt like I had to stretch myself in that way if I was going to, um, I guess, have something important to say. I don't
Yeah.
know if I do, but I think I knew that I had to do something different, in order to kind of find that.
Well, I think your book, which I do want to talk about, one of the themes, not like the whole, like I just don't want to mislead readers, is about a young person losing their friend, their friend
Yeah.
dying. And that is something we share in common. And I think it even happened to us at the same age. And I was getting goosebumps reading it because I never saw it coming. It's terrifying and it's sad. And still 10, 15 years later, it's sad. And so I think that is something you can write about universally. But what I think also makes you unique is that dual culture perspective, because like you called it the most progressive campus or whatever. Like going into it, I didn't even know that word progressive really, because like growing up in Berkeley, because I'm from Oakland
Right,
originally.
right,
So
right. Yeah.
and then like when I left and I came back and I was like, these people are using words I've never heard. They're like talking about like the word problematic was the most oft used word in like my 2 years there, and I'd never heard people say it. But then I noticed right after the election of Trump in like 2016, all those terms started being like mainstream. So it was kind of weird because I feel like going to Mills in 2009, 10, 11, 12 was kind of like a peek into the future. Uh,
Like prepped you for what was coming,
yeah.
like the yeah, I mean, I totally get that. I remember we can edit this out
I
later
don't care.
if you don't want to talk about it.
I'm
But
pretty open.
I remember you and um a couple of our mutual friends had a class that you guys would all leave like looking like you had just been through a war zone because it had gotten so intense and
Yeah.
heated. And like I think the whole you'll remember the name of it, I'm sure, but I think the entire name of the class was something like pretty loaded.
Yeah.
But it was one of those things that I think challenged people in every way it possibly could, right? But it was fascinating to me. I just remember being like, I'm so glad I'm not in that class because I'm already having to stretch and grow and like challenge my own core beliefs or point of views on the world in such a like fast and dramatic way that like I don't think I could handle that, right?
Yeah.
Because you guys would just be like, oh my God, like I feel like I need to apologize for existing,
So I'm gonna have to bleep this, so I'm only gonna say it the first time, just because I know I'm gonna have to bleep this for you too. But
Yeah.
I was regularly called, not to my face and not like in person, but referred to as a or the and in classes, and professors wouldn't correct or stop the student, and it wasn't. It bothered me and didn't bother me, and I don't want to get too into it, but it was like it was kind of interesting because it helped me see how often we make derogatory comments, we being male patriarchy society, about women in front of them without saying anything or acknowledging it. And so it was like, it was a good lesson for me, but the lesson didn't teach me we should be mean to men and overcome the patriarchy. The lesson was having people speak about you as if you're a bad person is just an awful experience. So we should all
Yeah.
stop doing it. And so, and I think most of us come out of Mills that way. I really do. I think it like actually balances the education out. So most of us, I don't know like too many, but I've kept in touch with enough colleagues, including you, to know that most of us have a smile on our face and we seem to be doing okay. Let's first start with your childhood. You said you were Catholic. Is that correct?
No, I grew up more, I would say more resembles what people would associate with like Southern Baptist almost, right? So
Okay.
very kind of traditional Protestant.
Were you a believer or were you like a kid going to church?
No, I was definitely believe. I mean, I feel weird using that in past tense. Like
Oh,
I
okay. Sorry.
definitely grew up. No, no, it's
Yeah.
okay. Like I think that I don't know that I identify as an evangelical Christian now, right? I think that I still identify as a Christian or someone who has faith and believes in wisdom from the teaching of Christ, right? But I believe in a lot of different spiritual teachings,
Yeah,
right? And I
yeah,
think so many of them have similar themes and crossover.
totally.
I think that in general, yeah, like the way I grew up, I was in church 6 days a week. So
Wow.
I went to school where I went to church. So it was very much kind of like a small, close knit community environment where, um, I went to church. I was at church more than I was at home, right? Like I was like
Yeah.
I was there from like birth through like 8th grade, and then I wound up going to a public high school. Um, but it was like 6 days out of the week, even at nights, like Wednesday night church, Sunday church, like sometimes Saturday stuff. So it was like my entire life was like in that kind of environment. So I think, I've seen the good, the bad, the ugly of religion, right? Like I feel
Yeah.
like I've
Wow.
seen so many um, really great things come from that. I mean, I still have some of the same friends that I grew up with that I met through that, right? Like I think I I think my desire to write, I think my desire to like learn and understand things and kind of seek deeper meaning came from growing up in church, from listening to sermons. Like I love stories, and I think a lot of that
Yeah,
came
that's
from
cool.
listening to sermons. And I think from extrapolating meaning from them, having to memorize text, Bible verses, things
Yeah.
like that. Like I can see how so many of these things kind of made their way into my own creative, life, right? And I think,
Yeah. That's
but
actually
I also,
incredible. Yeah.
yeah, like I also think though that, um, you know, when you see hypocrisy or when you see um, things you don't like about it, right, that it winds up, it can kind of turn you off from the entire institution, right? Like, and um, I think that our generation is interesting, and from the standpoint, I've heard that Gen Z is kind of skewing more religious,
Yeah.
and
Yeah. That's interesting.
and I think that what happened was, I think of a lot of like the generations, like I think it was kind of thrust on ours a little bit, maybe, or that like the world was changing, but those views weren't the messages weren't changing, and
Yeah.
so there's a
Yeah.
pushback. There's kind of like this isn't tracking with my personal beliefs, right? So how do I guess I guess I don't fit into this box, so I'm just gonna not do that, right? But I think what happened, especially COVID, for me, is I started realizing like, gosh, there are really, really positive things that society got from
Yeah.
church
Yeah.
that we don't have anymore, right? A sense
Yeah.
of community, a
Yeah.
sense of um where do men get to talk and have deep conversations
Yeah.
and bond with other men, right? My dad had that through like Bible study that he would go to at church or through prayer group. um and my parents had the church that they did together like in common. It gave them, they did choir together, that gave them a creative outlet and something they shared. And I think that was like core to like keeping their marriage like strong, right? And so it was kind of one of those things where I just started to think about, instead of the things that I didn't square with me about some current Christian. I think Christianity has gotten very tied into politics in the last, I mean, you could say it started with Clinton, you could say it started before that, whatever. But
Yeah.
like, I think it's at an all time high now that people associate your religion with your political views.
Totally. Yeah.
Um, but like, I think outside of all of that, if you're, um, I think I just started to see that there were things that we threw out that were actually useful and helpful for society at large that we
Hmm.
need to figure out how to do,
Yeah.
you know, and I think having some sort of values in common is really important, right?
Yeah. No, because you're reminding me, like, growing up, I was supposed to be Jewish, but I was just kind of non-denominational because of, and that was a choice. It wasn't my parents. And then I was always spiritual though. My parents were telling me how to meditate and like be good to people. My mom would say like say a prayer when you hear an ambulance, you know. So I was like a good
Yeah,
kid and I had like good values. But as I got older and I started to look into all of these things, I really thought it was interesting that people would be like, "Oh, Christians are wrong. They're so stupid. There wasn't even like a Jesus." And I'm like, and my brother's like an anthropologist and like a
yeah,
archaeologist, and like he's like, no, 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 like Jesus and Caesar lived at the same time. So anytime someone says that, you should ask them if they believe in Caesar. And so I started doing it, and it's really funny. It works. It works every time. If someone gets like really like negative and says like, "There, Jesus, that's so stupid," there 100% was a real guy named Jesus. Now, did he make fit? I don't even know. I'm not Christian,
right.
but
All
yeah,
of the,
yeah,
yeah,
like
like, yeah,
like the miracles, I'll leave that aside because who cares? But the important part is he totally was real. He was totally killed by the Roman government. He was a rabble rouser according to them, but really like a saint, like a great man trying to lead people to a better life and existence. So yeah, we need those values. They're timeless. It shouldn't matter. And then of course, as you said, because you're very balanced, and I thought that answer was like 10, 11 out of 10. Is that there is a balance to it though, and like you know the baby with the bathwater like there, and so yeah, we're in a tough time. And when people do associate Christianity with like ultra right wing, it's weird also to me because Jimmy Carter is like famously one of the best Christians on like earth, and he was 100% Democrat. So yeah, there it's a really silly game, I think, in politics. But I loved your answer, and I kind of want to dig deeper into before I get to what do you think happens when you die. If you're okay with it, can we talk about your friend who passed away? Is that okay with you?
um,
Um, like just a little bit.
yeah, I think
Okay.
so.
All
Yeah,
right. I
I'll let you know if
okay.
like,
I just have one question.
yeah,
It's not like a
yeah,
lot.
no, sure, sure,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah.
Just more like what advice would you have for young people who may or may not have a friend who is dying or is gonna die or they've already lost? Like, what have you learned? Because your book is somewhat about that, and I want to talk about that a little bit too. But the question I wanted to ask, which is why I asked your permission, is exactly that, which is like, did it give you any like resolve or advice for people who are grieving or pre-grieving, as I call it?
I think that sometimes like we have like nudges or some kind of intuition to like call someone or reach out, and maybe we do or maybe we don't for whatever reason. And I think like listen to those nudges and listen to those little like kind of when somebody pops into your mind, like give them a call. And you know, I think one of the things that I really am sad about is that I didn't get the chance to really connect with her, you know, and I think, you know, I didn't get the chance to connect with her for a while, you know, and um, I, I think that we can also sometimes make assumptions because, like, I mean, I remember before she was sick, before I knew she was sick, I kind of like, and I told her this when we finally did connect and I found out what had been going on with her, but it was kind of one of those things where I kind of assumed that like her life was a lot easier than mine.
Wow. Yeah.
And I was like, oh, you know, like I had kids and like I had just had a kid, or you know, I had health issues going on, like, you know, nothing super serious, but still bothersome and significantly impacting my ability to enjoy being a new mom and all those sorts of things, right? Um, and, I'm just kind of assuming that everything's great. And I think on her end, right? And I think sometimes we can do that, right? We can assume somebody else's life is easier, or what that, our life is harder, or whatever it is. Forget that we don't know what's actually going on with other people behind the scenes, right? Um, I think she was like posting travel pictures, or, things like that,
Yeah,
right?
yeah, no, totally.
And it was like, oh, like, they're so lucky, like they don't have kids yet, or whatever.
Yeah,
Like,
yeah,
what I
yeah.
mean? Like,
No, this is
they
like,
can do whatever they want,
yeah,
and
yeah.
it was like, and then it was like, oh no, like she's been going through a year of hell, right? And I didn't know because we hadn't talked, and my assumption was just totally off. And so I think it was that was like a really, really potent reminder to me, like that you really don't know what's going on with people, and you really should check in more, and that you should um you know not assume that whatever they're putting online or putting out there is like the entire story, right?
No, totally. And I mean, gosh, thank you. First of all, thank you for sharing that. Thank you for
Yeah.
being so brave to talk about it, because I know it's not easy and I know it's never going to be easy. But what you said is so important and so paramountly helpful to people, because first of all, because of social media, it's like a duplicitous society. Like, there's for person A who only posts negative stuff online, then there's person B who only posts positive, and that in between is the real truth. But then also, you reminded me, like, my dad recently has been going through a lot of health issues. All his friends depend on me for updates, and then I get told by my mom and dad, like, stop talking about us and our health. And it's like so frustrating, because I don't have a moral answer to this quandary, which is, should you tell people when you are sick? Should you expect them to figure it out? Like, all that. So I'm not asking you that. I don't want to keep talking about it for a lot of reasons, but it's, if you care to talk about it, of course you can. I'm not trying to censor you, but
Yeah,
yeah,
no, but I think it's such a personal decision,
yeah,
right?
totally.
Um and I understand why somebody might not. And I think um I think it's a weird thing to just like actively reach out to somebody about,
Totally.
right?
Yeah.
Like, hey, just wanted you to know that,
Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah.
and I think also when you're, I imagine when you're going through something like that, like you're not in that headspace, and you don't want to deal with someone else's feelings about what you're going through, right?
Yeah. Totally.
So, um, so but I do think people could get, upset or grieve, like, or like, why didn't they tell me, or, have feelings like that. And I think, and sure, like I had to grapple with those on some level, but I think I don't know that I would do anything. I don't know what I would do in that situation. And
Yeah.
and I think, um, yeah, I think I don't know. Like, I guess I'm curious, like from your hospice work, like, do they, like, what kind of, I don't know, are there like steps that like you walk people through in that time where you're like, I don't know, I guess, are there kind of like things where you're like, is there anybody you want to talk to, or is there anybody that, is that kind of something that's a part of the process?
Wow, that's a great question. There's two steps where that would come up. One is indoctrination, which I was not in charge of. So when you're filling out patient forms, most of the patients I was working with had dementia or some form of it. So it was
Mm,
often family members taking care of it, or power of attorney kind of thing. But once they were in the place, one of my chief things to do when I was there was to interview them, ask questions, because for a lot of reasons, but and it was fun. It was like fun to do research with these people. A lot of them were like in their 80s and 90s, and like they would tell me about like World War II, and like
yeah.
and like that Truman, that like it's just like crazy, like the stuff you'd hear. Like people would still be angry about politics from like at the time 60 years ago, now 70.
Right.
Um, so that's a really good question, and I don't have a great answer, unfortunately, for it. But I do know that I think what you and I both had to deal with is when it's the person's young, it's especially different and difficult because it's just like extra sad, you know. And I had to watch not my best friend, my really close friend from childhood's parents grieve and watch him. And then also several friends from our high school group didn't know what was going on. And I finally just texted all of them, like just a freaking text on like the third to last day when he was like, you know,
Yeah.
like 90 pounds instead of 180, you know, and like, and it was like they all came over and just saw him at like the last stage, you know, of like, and it was just, it's hard to talk about, but I really feel for what you talked about. And I don't think there's an easy answer, but I do think you and I talking about this will help people. Like it is, there's something off in our culture with this, and it's why I do Coffin Talk. It really is like, I think we don't need to obsess with death and overthink about it, but it should certainly be reflective in our decision making, you know? And like you only
Yeah.
live once is like a weird example of it, and then fear of missing out is another. You know, there's a lot of acronyms that kind of tie into this. I think I'm going to ask the question about what you think happens when you die, and then I'm going to go into Annie in retrospect, because Annie in retrospect, even the title is about retrospect, so we're kind of like
Yeah.
bumping into that. So I want to save that. That was a tough decision for this podcast host. So first, let's just do the pivotal question of the podcast, which is, what do you think happens when you die? And you know, now, not when you were a child, but now, what do you think happens when you die?
Hi everybody, this is Mike Oppenheim, the host of Coffin Talk, the show you're currently listening to, and I'm interrupting to ask you if you would mind doing me a favor and subscribing to my online publication called You Are Here on Substack. It features weekly essays. I also have fiction, and of course there are links to the podcast and all the bonus episodes. It's completely free, and I would love your support, so please head over to mikeyop.com, that's MIKEYOPP.com, and sign up today. Thank you. Bye.
I definitely don't think it ends here.
Cool.
Right? Like I believe that like we are spiritual beings, like in physical bodies. And like I believe in having a soul. Like I would call it a soul. I think you could say like it's energy, we're all energy, right? But like I think it just doesn't track with me that like when this body goes, like that energy just goes with it. Like I feel like that energy has to go somewhere. What that looks like, I have no idea. And I think I've kind of like made peace with that.
Cool.
You know, that like it's just like a thing that I don't get to know until I get to know.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah. I like that. That's a great quote. I like that.
Yeah. Like I feel like it's kind of like the next dimension that like, okay, well, when you're ready for it, like when you're at that point where you get to know, you get to know. Like it's like this mystery until it's not, you know?
Yeah.
And you know, I do think that there's some way of communicating. Like I think that energy can still be with us. I think it can go on to do whatever it's supposed to do after. But like, I mean, I'm not closed off to the idea of like reincarnation in some kind of form. I'm not close to the idea of, you know, I'm not close to anything, but I think like, I do think, and it karma feels real to me. Like, I feel like the idea of, right. Like, I think the idea of like, of having like that, like you're getting kind of these chances, like, to like get better and better and to grow, like that squares with me.
Mm-hmm.
The idea that like I also don't think you have to earn heaven.
Yeah. Wow.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. And I think that that's kind of like, you know, that could be a religious debate. It could be all sorts of things, right? But I think one of the core fundamental things that I've always found really beautiful about Christianity is that you can't earn it. It's something you accept the freedom of being free of not ever being able to earn it by like giving it like, okay, I can never earn this, but like I accept forgiveness and I can believe that it's being given to me, like, you know, so like that I think is really beautiful, is like that idea that you can't earn your spot in heaven, but like you should still try to be the best person you can.
I love that.
Right. So
Yeah.
like, I think, that grace, like that to me is like the most beautiful and profound thing about Christianity is the kind of paradox of it. And that it's really just about grace and about like, you can never achieve that. But like, the important thing is like accepting that you're loved anyway.
You're like interview 265, and I've never heard anyone articulate that in the whole time. And I've had a lot of Christians on, so that's really cool. That was really, really, really thought provoking for me, and I'm going to be thinking about that for sure all day. Because that's really interesting. I don't even need to get into it. I think the listeners don't need me to re-explain what you just said, but like the paradox part and just like, yeah, and the word grace is just a beautiful word. Anytime someone says it, I actually calm down. I actually feel my heart like relax. I'm curious because we kind of have like an inverted child scenario which what I mean by that is I have two daughters and a boy, and you have a daughter, and then as an extra surprise, twin boys, which I cannot imagine that. Excuse me. I cannot imagine two at once, two boy energies at once. So I'm curious though.
Yeah.
You don't have to talk about your kids that much, but like, and it's a podcast, like it's about you, but do they ask you questions about any of this, and how do you feel those answers?
Ooh, yeah. So my daughter definitely has. She's 10 and a half.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
But she's also like a very deep, introspective person. And she's kind of going through like a Wednesday Addams phase right now, a little bit, right? Like
Awesome.
She went from like rainbows and unicorns to like kind of being like, let's talk about death. I don't know. It's interesting. But like I think that that was really interesting to me when she kind of, I think, her great grandmother passed away a year or two ago at 103. And it kind of, brought up that conversation a little bit. Like, what do you think happens? And honestly, like, we kind of just asked her the question back.
Cool.
Because like, I want her to think about these things and decide what she thinks. And I shared, I was like, well, this is kind of what I think, or what I think, might be the case, but, really, I don't know, and it's different than how it was positioned for me growing up. Obviously, like, kind of grew up with that more traditional pearly gates, everything's golden, kind of angels and all the whatever, right? Like this idea of a physical heaven that looks like the Gilded Age or something. I don't know, like people in robes, and so, I mean, I think as a parent, you wonder, is the nuance too much for kids? Is that,
nice.
I think there's an argument to be made for giving kids something in a neat little box, maybe so they can understand it. But I also think, like, I guess I never wanted to put my point of view of anything on my kid, like, I don't know. So
no, that was great.
We share kind of what we think, but we kind of let her,
No, I love when you said bounce it back. That really resonated because that's kind of what I do. My son is also, he's 10, and my daughter, the older one who speaks and would be in this part of the conversation, she's like turning 5, and I definitely just flip it back to her. But that was a great answer. We're gonna run out of time if I don't get into this next part. So thank you for letting me, because I really do want to talk about your book. First of all, I said it at the beginning, and I'm probably going to even say it in the intro to the show that I record after, but like, I truly loved your book. It's, first of all, I don't want to ruin what it's about, but I will just say, when you hear about it, you might think, oh, Freaky Friday. It's so different. You really did not like, and I'm worried that people would throw that at you, because it's like such a different concept. It's so awesome. And I love, like, one of my favorite reading experiences, not books, is like Gone Girl, but like, I just love books that grip you the way yours does, that has this like It's following two timelines, but with the same character. I just loved it. I'm getting goosebumps, and I don't want to ruin your book, and I don't want to say things I shouldn't. So it is called Annie in Retrospect. It is about what it's like to cross the threshold of 40 and have children and remember your 20s. And it's, extra ironic because we knew each other in our 20s and now we're in our 40s and we're talking retrospectively. So I want to read just a very short passage out loud, and then I kind of want to hear you talk about it as the author, as a persona, and then also like the character. So for people who didn't go to an MFA program, the person who writes the book is not the character, no matter how much you want to say it is, no matter how much you want to like throw it on them. So I'm not going to say Kristina is the heroine of her novel. I'm also going to admit that she wrote for global brands before penning her debut novel. Like there are crossover themes as far as what you do to earn income and how hard you're working and how much of life is flying by. And so this is kind of like a passage that, not kind of, this is a passage that just struck me so hard. And I hope you notice, people listening or watching, this ties in almost every theme I've brought up. So that's how gifted you are, Kristina. All right. So this is from page 224 of Annie in Retrospect. Ugh, that's really tempting, but I'm so slammed tomorrow. Rain check, though? Maybe we can do it Friday, Joe replied. Annie wanted to cry. This felt urgent, but she couldn't explain why. She just had this sinking feeling in her gut that it was now or never. Joe, please, please, with everything that's been going on lately, I just really need you. I need this. She knew she sounded pathetic, but she didn't care. So much of life was prioritizing stupid meetings and wasting energy on office politics or a million other meaningless things that weren't important at the end of it all. It was those rare moments of connection and simplicity and soaking in the beauty of the world that stayed with you. She understood this so much more now, and she knew Joe had at the end too. It's all BS, I'm paraphrasing. Joe had said to her on one of their last phone calls, all the stress and time I wasted worrying about a stupid job, it really didn't matter at all. Wow. I mean, just wow. It's like, that is so powerful. I hope when you wrote it, you realized that was brilliant. Did you?
Yeah, I mean, I think so. Just to like kind of give people that just like a little idea.
Yeah,
of
no,
what that was.
yeah.
So
I didn't want to like over talk it up. So yeah.
No. Yeah, it's fine. I think like the Annie, the heroine in the novel, was able to, with all of her knowledge of a 40-year-old, was able to go back to being 25 and spend time with her best friend that is no longer alive in the future in 2023. So
can I just throw in, it wasn't a choice. That's such a interesting part of it, though. Like, yeah, just sorry.
Yeah, it wasn't. Yeah, she was kind of thrust on a healing journey from her Nona.
Thank you. Sorry.
Yeah, no, like, so I think that honestly, it was inspired from a conversation that I had with my friend who did pass away. Mm-hmm. And that point of view of just kind of like all the time and stress that we put on ourselves to achieve, that it doesn't matter. Like it's like, I think that was just like something made very clear to her, and really clearly communicated to me, was just how important, like how inconsequential, like how we make money is really in the grand scheme of life, and like what actually matters. Right. And that we can put so much of ourselves into that. But when stuff gets really real, when we're talking life or death, like that is not what you're worried about at all. Right. And I had like a situation happen to me in my 20s, actually, where I almost died. And I think you did too, actually. Yeah. Like, yeah. And I think when you go through something like that, it also kind of like, because for me, it was something dumb. Like I didn't take time to go to the doctor, and I didn't realize how sick I was because I didn't want to take off of work.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right. Wow. And then I wound up having to take like 6 weeks off of work or something crazy, because I wound up so sick, right? Yeah. And it's like, I think when you go through something like that young, you kind of realize, one, this is way more fragile than I realized. And two, like, was I really gonna like lose my life over like not wanting to ask for a day off from work or a couple hours to go see a doctor, like, and it's like, I think hopefully learning those lessons young, you can pull that forward. But yeah, I think we're so focused on, success or achievement in this like society that we live in, and what that actually like looks like. I think it can't be measured by like our roles or what we do for a living. It needs to be measured on something that really is aligned with our values and what actually matters, right? So
no, totally. And it's just like, the thing that always reminds me of that is when people you idolize or people you worship or people who you assume has everything going for them take their own life, like when a celebrity is like really high profile and you're just like, but everyone was DMing you and like, like hearting your like stupid posts, and like how could that not like overcome whatever it was, and so yeah, thank you for explaining that, because it's just so hard. I don't know how like raising children. I don't know how to like instill them with like good work ethic, and like of course you owe your employer some loyalty, and like don't ghost and quit your job. Like that's one end of this conversation, but then the other is like, don't just go straight from school to school to school to get the degree, and don't like not marry the right person because you need to move across the country for the job, and like and these themes are all over your book, but it's I don't know. Your book was really deep. You are really deep. We are running out of time on the interview, and I do want to give my guests the floor at the end of the interview. So, I will just leave it at that. But I will tell everyone one more time to please check out KristinaVoegele.com, and there will be a link in the bio and all that. But yeah, do you have anything you want to share with our audience before we go?
Yeah, no, I think one cool thing about writing a book like this is I get to have like, it opens up cool conversations, and I think like one of the biggest takeaways that I've gotten is people, one, like most people who are in their 40s, like don't want to be in their 20s again, like and like that's been a really cool thing to see, like to discover, right?
Wow.
Like,
yeah.
Yeah. Like you're like, okay, yeah, like I wish I looked like I was in my 20s again, but I don't want to be in my 20s again, right? Like I think that most people are like, I am a better human being. Like I'm a more together human being. Like, yeah, like the stresses are different. And there's, adulting is hard, obviously, right? But I think how lost and confused you feel in your 20s, that like angst, like nobody misses that, right? Like nobody misses that. And I think the biggest takeaway like has been like to be like the advice that most people are saying is like, I wish I took more risks, and I wish I was like didn't take everything so seriously.
Yeah.
Like I think most people are like, gosh, I just like I stressed out so much about what was I going to do, when was I going to be my person, when were all these things going to work out for me, right? Like you're just like so angsty about it all the time, and it's like, I think it's like, that's the thing, you're going to like want to shake your younger self and be like, just enjoy this, like this season of possibility, and like that you're becoming who you need to be for all those things to kind of unfold, and trust that they will. But it's like, but I think most people like never regret taking the risk. And like the biggest risk I ever took was like moving cross country, and it was the best thing I ever did. Right. And so I think that's like the big kind of takeaway, and about living, like advice from the living, so to speak. But like I think my friend who did pass away young lived like really full life, like, and like I think like there was just so many ways that she like saw the world, like the smallest little things, like when she would go grocery shopping, she was like, I'm grocery, like, you know, she like
Yeah,
make a little
yeah.
dance out of it, like, you know, like the smallest little things like brought her joy. And like and I think like I think about how just like loving the moment you're in, embracing it, trying not to resist. Everything has its own misery and magic, every single phase of life, right? So it's like just like cherishing that exact moment and taking the risks when you can, you know?
Yeah.
Is like I think the biggest thing.
No, that's so wonderful. And it's funny because the friend I lost, he hosted like taco eating contests. He was like that guy. Like he was just the guy who like
I love
yeah.
that essay you wrote
Yeah.
about him. It was so
Yeah.
beautiful, Mike. Honest to God, like
Oh,
I
thanks.
could cry even like thinking about it. Like it
Well,
was so good.
thank you. He was
Yeah.
worth it. And one last thing about your book, just because you reminded me of it. All of us thought our bodies were like horrible in our 20s, and all of us would only trade that. Like you mentioned it just now, and the scene where she first like looks down. I got this photo from an old friend of mine when we were both 27, and I'm like, who is that drop dead gorgeous guy who like hated himself? Like you know what I mean? It's just so funny that
like why did I not know?
Yeah,
or like how could I not have seen it? The body dysmorphia is so real.
So real, and it's so
such
crazy.
a real thing. But you know what? Like 20 years from now, you're gonna think that about yourself now, right?
Yeah, yeah.
I was even just like looking at pictures of me right after I had like my daughter and how I felt so bad about myself. And then I'm looking at, I'm like, oh, I look pretty young. Like, you know, and I'm like, oh, it was like 10 years ago, right?
Yeah.
But I was like, oh, like, you know, I could only see the negative at the time. But like we're as young as we'll ever be now.
Yeah,
right?
yeah, wow, that's cool. Kristina Voegele, thank you for coming on the show. And to everyone at home, the best way to support the show is to head over to my Substack site, mikeyop.com, mikeyop.com. Sign up for the once a week emails I send out. And thank you for listening. Thank you for watching. And thank you, Kristina. And my name is Mike Oppenheim. This has been Coffin Talk. We will see you soon.